Okay, as we said, as we stated, the scene will be Bez Hashem sometimes in the near future when everyone will get together again. But tonight we begin Masechta Nazir. It's
Gotta mute everyone, Liz. You gotta mute everyone.
Yeah. We're beginning Masechta Nazir. We'll see. The Gemara discusses why its location, its locale, why exactly it's over here. Just to give you a few Rashi Tevis of Naziris and a little Hashkafa of Naziris. First of all, vis-a-vis the Masechta itself, it's a Lashon Meshuna, a Russian Yud Ches. It's similar to Nedarim, which the Lashon of the Gemara was a bit different. We're going to continue that theme in Masechta Nazir. In fact, the Tiferes Yisrael in Masechta Avos, Perek Beis, Mishnah Dalet says that Rav Ashi wrote different Mahaduris. In other words, he would go over, he'd write, he'd edit and rewrite this, and he never rewrote these Masechtas. And that's why Nedarim is Mishuna, and that's why Nazir is Mishuna. In addition, similar to the last Masechta Nedarim where we didn't have Rashi, it was called a Mefarish. Over here we have a Mefarish, but it's not called Rashi. If you look at the Gilyon Hashas, that's Rabbi Kiva Ega on the page. I don't know exactly where you have it, but it says over here, B'Sefer Shem HaGedolim Legoyin Marenu Chaim Yosef David as Luli. That's the Ritva. B'Yoshin Kosav B'Shem Harav Yad Malachi. I guess it's not the Ritva. The Pirish Nazir ain't a Rashi, so it's not Rashi. We have a Masorah that it's the Rivon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nassin, the Rivon, who is Rashi's grandson. Rashi had three daughters, and some of his grandchildren were the Rashbam, Rabbeinu Tam, and this was the Rivon. So you'll notice that it wasn't Rashi because Tosfos is not Tosfos. Tosfos is written to counteract Rashi, Pirish V'Kuntras, and in our Masechta, the Tosfos is an explanation. So we're going to go with the Tosfos and the Rush, similar to the Nedarim. The Tosfos where we use the Ran. In our Masechta, we're going to use the Tosfos and the Rush. So that's the basic nitty gritty of the Masechta. The Tosfos and Afnan Beis they says that most of the Masechta is written by the Marap, is Rabbeinu Peretz. Right? The Tosfos is Rabbeinu Peretz. Okay, so the actual Naziris is very much like Nedarim. It's a Yimakabalit, Ish Kiyafli Linda Neder Nazal Hashem. A man expresses a desire to be a Nazir to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Linda Neder, we saw a Hekesh in the beginning of Masechta Nedarim between the Yodos of Naziris and Lad and Nedarim. So it's a get a Neder. A person says, I'm any Nazir, I want to be a Nazir, Bli Neder. Right? Then the person is what? Is a Nazir. So it's subject to the same halachas of Nedarim. The husband and father will be able to take it off if she's an Ayam Marasa. If she's a married woman in a sewer, the husband will be able to take it off B'Yom Shamo. You can go to a Chacham, even not Yom Shamo for Karata. It would be subject to the same guidelines when it comes to taking it off. Hafara of the neder. The halachas associated, we're all familiar with the halacha of wine, that a nazir is not permitted to go ahead and drink wine. In fact, he can go ahead and any extract of a grape, not only wine. In fact, the Rambam in the Sefer Mitzvahs counts 10 mitzvahs associated. Listen to some of them. You can't eat grapes. You can't eat raisins. You can't eat chatzanim is grape seeds. Zogim is the skins, and so anything to do with that. In addition, the Nazir, he goes ahead and he doesn't cut his hair. The Nazir does not cut his hair to the end of his Naziris. The end of Naziris, when he brings his karbanis, he cuts his hair and throws it underneath the pot of the shlomim, and he burns his hair as well. So those are the mitzvah of not drinking wine, the mitzvah of not taking a haircut. And there's the third thing, not being metam alamesim. A Nazir is not allowed to be metam alamesim, and those are three halachas of Naziris. Whether it's an Issa Chefza or an Issa Gavra, very interesting, right? We went in Masechta Nedarim, we saw a neder is an Issa on the object, and a shvua is an Issa on the person. Is a Nazir an Issa Gavra, or is a Nazir, in other words, is the Nazir also to drink wine, or is the wine also on the Nazir? Is the wine, that's the subject? Is it a shvua on him, or is it a neder? And that in fact is the machlokes Rishonim. That in fact is the machlokes Rishonim. Now the inyan of the Ziris is very interesting. It's in one hand we say kodesh yiyeh, he should be kodesh. Kodesh yiyeh, he should be kodesh. And in fact, we learn Stam Naziris is Lamed Yoim from the words Kodesh Yiyeh. Yiyeh is Yud is 10, Hey is 5, and it says it twice. So 15 twice is 30. So Stam Naziris it can't be Naziris less than 30 days. There is no minimum. There's no maximum. You could be a Nazir for the rest of your life if you want. You could be a Nazir. There's a Nazir Shimshim, which we'll get into, who could be Metamal Mason. But the Naziris has no set amount. The Meshech Chochmah says beautifully, fellas, the reason it doesn't have a set amount because very much it's a very personal thing. So I heard from Rabbi Bornstein, he said very nicely. He said, Kodesh Yiyeh, that one hand you're Kodesh, on the other hand you bring a Korban Chatas. When at the end of Naziris, you're going to bring an oila, a chatas, and a shlamim on a regular naziris. Where's the chait? In other words, obviously you're being korban chatas. There's a sin associated with it, so it really conflicts very much. And it seems that based upon the Meshech Chochmah, it's a very personal type of thing. Naziris, what you do with your naziris, is the purpose of naziris is to go ahead and be pirish for the Dvar Kedusha. You should be kodesh. You're making yourself kodesh for something. You're kodesh for something. We have actually give me a chumash. I trouble you. There's a chumash I understand over there. It's very interesting about who would be a nazir. I saw a fantastic pshat. From Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. There's 2 parshas in the Torah of Tumah. One we find in the parsha of the Kahanim. It says in Parshas Emor that speak to the Kahanim and tell them nefesh lo yitama ba'amav. A kohen can be metama to what? To anyone. Ki im l'sheiro akorav elav, to his wife, limo to his mother, la'aviv to his father, ulibno his son, ulibito and his daughter, ula'achiv, and lachosa basula if she wasn't married. Okay, so these the kohen could be metama to, right? So you have wife, you have children, all these are all listed. That's in the parsha of the kohen, who a kohen could be metama to. In fact, a nazir cannot be metama to anybody. A nazir can't be metama to anyone. But in the parsha, it's fascinating to note. What does he say? Kol Yemei Aziru Lashem, all the days that he's in the state of his Naziris, Al Nefesh Meis La Yavai. Can't be Metama to Mismeis. Guys, listen, be Meduyak. Guys, La Aviv, Ula Imai, La Achiv, Ula Chaisai, La Yitam Alehem. Who are you missing? Wife, son, daughter. Wife, son, daughter. Says Rabbi Yaakov that you see from here who is more mistaber to be a Nazir is a young person. One that was never married, one that didn't have children, the idealistic person who wants to go ahead and be pirish for Kodesh Baruch Hu, to be mavdal himself from the hana of this world. And that's why it's a beautiful diak that it doesn't mention anything about a wife or children, because who is more apt to be a Nazir is the one who is so idealistic and someone who is so spiritually connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a fascinating idea.
That's why.
Okay, so now it's again, no, how it works. How it works doesn't make a difference. How it works, that's the question. How mechanically it works, but the person himself, of course, it has to do with. Now, it's very, very interesting that if it's an inyan of kedusha and precious, a personal decision that one makes, then why do you understand not drinking wine? Yeah, that's an inyan of precious, separating from something that's mutter. Go ahead. An inyan of your hair. It's an inyan of precious. You may like your hair very much. What's the Tamal Mason? What's Tamal Mason? That, in other words, that doesn't seem to be an inyan of precious. What does that have to do with kedusha? So I sent you out on your phone something really geschmack, guys. I sent you something on your phones, and we'll put it on the screen over here. It's a medrash. It's in Perik Yud, halacha Perik Yud Aleph in Bamidbar Rabbah. Guys, listen to this. Kol Yemei Aziru Lashem. Bo Re'ei Shekol Mi Shemekadosh Es Atzmai Malmata. Anyone who's makdash himself below here in this world, Mikachne Soimel Milo. They makdish him above in the next row. Zelafi Shemazeres Atzme Min Yayin. Since this person has separated himself from wine, v'noig tsar ba'atzmoi shlo yigalech roishoy, and he's noig tsar, not taking a haircut. They lishmer atzme min avera. The whole purpose is to go ahead and be shomer from an avera, to stay away from. Hakadosh Baruch Hu, harihu choshev lefanai ki kohen gadol. Says Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the nazir is like a kohen gadol. Ma kohen gadol asel tamei l'chol hamesim, just like a kohen gadol is asel tamei l'chol hamesim. Af nazir, so to the nazir, asel tamei l'chol hamesim. He's asel tamei l'chol hamesim. Ma kohen gadol ksiv ki nezer shem and mishchas elakav alav. The nezer is the crown of Shem and mishchas is upon him. Af benazir oimer ki nezer elakav al roishay. Ma bekoyin ksiv yibodel Aaron akdish kadosh kadashim. Af nazir nikra kadosh shenemar kol yimei nizor kodesh hu Hashem. So said beautifully, fellas, the whole inyan of being Pirish, being from Tamla Mason, is not something to do with his precious. It has to do with the state he's been elevated to. He's in a state of elevated kedusha, like the Kohen Gadol, and just like the Kohen Gadol can't be Tamla Mason, so too the Nazir can't be Tamla Mason. Not because of precious that he was makabel upon himself, but once he's there, he's in that state. He's in a state of kedusha. He automatically can't be Tamla Mason. And the Sefer Chinuch therefore says beautifully that if a person that would go ahead mikabel naziris and drink wine, he'd be over on the issue of layachel devarai. He'd profane his words. He'd be over on his neder. If a person would take a haircut, he'd be over on layachel devarai. But if a nazir would be metamel lemesim, says the Sefer Chinuch, he would not be over on layachel devarai because he never made a neder to be mikabel, not to be metamel lemesim. It automatically came upon him. Achmas' kedusha. Right? So look at the hair and how to understand the three levels of Naziris. So that is a little overview and an understanding of what a Nazir is. In a perfect world, a Nazir is somebody who really fights his Yetzer Hara, who wants to go ahead and do the right thing. Again, not everyone is successful, but this is the idea of what he wants. The Masechta, the beginning of the Masechta deals very much with the same Masechta we had in Masechta Nedarim about Kinuyim and Yadais. And a lot of the Masechta, guys, believe it or not, has to do with Kachim. In fact, the Gemara is going to ask, why is Nazir in the Seder Nashim? It should be in, according to Rosh and Taisvis, it should be in Seder Kachim, because it has so much to do with Karbanos, as again, the Karbanos of a Tahar Nazir, and the Karbanos of a Tameh Nazir. It's very involved in that. And therefore, what? The Gemara is going to ask that kasha. Yes, Harold. Sefer Chinuch. That's the Hezbollah. That's the Hezbollah in the Sefer Chinuch. That's the Hezbollah in the Sefer Chinuch. Just to conclude, the Avnei Nezer. This I heard from Rabbi Bornstein. He said beautifully that the Avnei Nezer in Perek Vav Pasuk Chaf, it says he brings all his karbanis. In other words, he's finished his naziris, guys. He's bringing all the karbanis, and then it says va'acher yishta hanazir yayin, and if the nazir drinks wine. Question is, he's not a Nazir anymore. Notice the lashon of the pasuk is he took his haircut, he went ahead, he burnt his hair, he brought his karbonis, he's now mechusik kippurim, he's squeaky clean, and then it says ve'achakach afterwards yishta had Nazir yayin. Why are you calling him a Nazir anymore? He's not a Nazir. Says the Avnei Nezer beautifully in the way I'm explaining it. You could look in Nazir and says, "Wow, 30 days, that's a long time. I really like my wine, you know." Wow, I made it, I finished. Or you can view, the reason I was parish from the wine in the first place was to go ahead and fight my Yetzer Hara. That fight should be something that is constant. In other words, Kaviyachol, the drug addict in rehab, right? He goes to rehab, and after it's finished, you want him to take with him the rehab with him. So same thing. So we're calling him a Nazir, even though his Naziris is over, we're still calling him a Nazir. Then he can drink wine. Because why? Because he's taking with him but with his Kabbalahs that he made. The beautiful to have from the Avnei Nezer. With that in mind, let's begin. Masechta. Okay, we wish everyone Atzlacha Rabbah. We should be zeichet to finish this start this Masechta and finish many more together. Okay, now we know outside, what's a kinoi? Let's go back. A kinoi is, according to Reb Yochanan, the lashon of lashon umois. Let me make sure I tell you the right shot. It's on Daf Yud in Masechta Nidarim. Daf Yud Masechta Nidarim. So Rabbi Yochanan says the lashon umay, saying it's the lashon of the umais. It's the language of the umais. And Rabbi Shimon Lacher says the lashon shabadon chachamim. It's the lashon that the chacham came up with. In other words, in the kinoi is what we call whatever we call it in English. That's what it's called in Hebrew. In other words, a Nazirite. If a person says, "I want to be a Nazirite," b'li neder, he would be a Nazir because that's what it is. A kinoi is the language of the nations of the world, paralleling exactly lashon kodesh. And Reish Lakish says no. Reish Lakish says the Chachamim chose certain words because they don't want you to use. They didn't want to use the word carbon because you may come to use the word Hashem, carbon Hashem, and therefore they chose the Chachamim certain language to avoid being Maitzi Shem Shemayim Levatala. What's a yad? What's a yad? We said, it spoke out in Masechta. Yad is beautiful. That when you take a pot and you hold the pot and you pick up the handle, the pot gets slept along with it. So a yad is a lashon that you can go ahead and understand from his language what he meant. And even though he didn't verbalize the whole pot, he only verbalized part of it. And of course, we had a whole Gemara whether you need yadayim mochichos or not, meaning to what extent does the yad have to be explanatory? Does it have to be very explanatory or not so explanatory? So, for example, if a person would say aha, and there's another working in front of him, no means I shall be. That I shall be, even it would be a regular yad. Maybe it means I should be a nazir. Maybe it should be I need a habitainus. I should be fasting. But once, so that's pretty. It's pretty not clear. It's not a yad mochiach. Once you have the nazir walking in front of him, the yad is mochiach, and therefore we're going to see on the Amid Beis that you need yadayim mochichas. So this sugya again parallels the beginning of Masechta Nedarim very much, and we begin. Kol kinoi naziris k'naziris. All the kinuyim, literally the nicknames of naziris, are like naziris. We're going to see nazik. We're going to see that in our Mishnah. We're going to see them. Now, what happens? So Omer, a person says, aha, I shall be. And it's going to be where a nazir is passing in front of him. How is that nazir? Or he says, aha, na'a, I should be na'a, beauty. And he's holding on to his hair. And he's holding on to his hair. He's a nazir. Now, notice, we began by saying all the kinuyim of naziris are like naziris, and we slip right away into explaining yadais. We do not explain the kinuyim. This is exactly the same question we had in Masechta Nedarim. You pasach b'kinui, and then what do? You shift right away into yadais rather than saying kinuyim. What are kinuyim? So nazir is the ikar naziris, guys. Nazir, the word nazir is ikar naziris, and here nazik, nazich, pazich. All these are kinuyim of. So a person would say harini naziach or pasiach or nazik, he would be a nazir, even though he didn't go ahead and verbalize it. He didn't say the word nazir. He would be a nazir. How do you say nazir? So we began the Masechta by saying kinuyim. We interjected yadais by saying aha or hana'a, and then we go ahead and we slip into what slip into kinuyim, going back and explaining what we said in the first place. Harini kizeh, the guy says I should be like this, or harini misalsel. We'll see what that means. Harini mechalkel, or harei alay l'shaleach pera. It's upon me to send out my pera, my chup. Harizeh nazir. In these cases, he would be a nazir. However, if it would say harei alay tzipoirim, it's upon me to bring birds. The nazir fellas, when he is tamei, he brings two birds, a chatas and an oila, and he brings an animal as an asham. So we're going to see what that means. Right now, what we need for today's daf is the whole inyan of kinuyim and yadais. So again, kol kinuyim of naziris are like naziris, just like nedarim are nedarim, and all yadais of naziris are like naziris. However, we have a problem with the order of the Mishnah, and B, we have a problem with why is Masechta Nedarim in Seder Nashim rather than what in Kachim. Tana b'Seder Nashim koi. My taima tani nazir. What's the reason Masechta Nazir is in Seder Nashim? And for the Gemara, Tana akra koi. He's going on the pasuk. What does the pasuk say? It says in the Pasha of Gittin, if she does not find favor in his eyes, Why didn't he find favor in his eyes? Because he found a matter of immorality, of znus, right? What caused the averi? So here's the question. If the reason why he divorced her is because of wine, so why doesn't Naziris follow Masechta Gittin? Good. You're telling me the reason why it's here is because it has a Nashim Dika aspect to it. Because Yayin can bring about immorality. And it says, why would most people get divorced? Because of immorality. So the question, the unstated question is, so why doesn't it follow Masechta Gittin? And the answer is, the Ka'amar Kol Haroya Soite B'Kilkula Yazer Atzma Min HaYayin. Anyone who sees the Saita going through her ordeal, we're going to see Masechta Saita B'Ez Hashem Yisbarach, the ordeal, the terrible ordeal of the Saita, those who present have to witness it, while they put her through to admit the truth, so not to be Moicha, the Shem Mafayrit, the Shem Hashem on parchment, right? Terrible things she goes through. Anyone who sees that says, you know why she ended up like that? Because she drank. So therefore, now we understand why it follows Masechta Saita rather than Gittin. Okay, it doesn't follow Saita, but it should follow Saita. Okay, the Taisus, the Gemara deals with that. The Gemara, the Taisus speaks it out where to deal with that, but it should follow. Okay, so therefore we've established why it's not in Seder Kachim, it's over here because of Arayos, and why is it following? Why is it get divorced because of Arayos? Why is it in juxtaposed next to Saita? Is because of anyone who sees a Saita going through what she goes through should go ahead and be as Yaya. Okay, now Pasach B'Kinuyim, you began the Masechta, and what did you say? You said Kinuyim. You said that Nazir, right? That any Kinui of a Nazir is like a Nazir. Umafarish Yadais. And when you came to go explain, why did you explain? You explained Yadais. Aha, I shall be as a Nazir, and Aha na as a Nazir. So Amarav Vitema Kadi. So it's either anonymously or that was his name, right? Things in the beginning of Bamitzia, they deal with it. It's missing words. Again, spoke out often. Missing words is the first Boaz in the Masechta Erchin says they memorize mnemonics based by song. I think the Gemara in the end of Megillah says the song was a way of learning, and therefore they memorized it a certain way. So Rebbe wrote it down the way it was memorized. But again, so therefore it's missing words. So you're missing words in the Mishnah. Machikatani. Kol kinui naziris kinaziris. All kinuyim of naziris like naziris. And now here are missing words. The yadish naziris kinaziris. And the yad of naziris is like naziris. The elohin yadish. So what are the yadish? Haimer aha haris and nazir. If a person would say aha, he is a nazir. Good. So now you've established why you have yadish present in the Mishnah. Good. Again, you call kinuyim nedarim nedarim. You don't mention yadish, and then you say aha or hana, which is a yad. So you're missing words. Here's the way you read the Mishnah. Kol kinuyim nedarim the yadish nedarim kinedarim aha or aha naa harizeh nazir. And why did you explain first? You explain yadish, the last statement, rather than kinuyim, the opening statement. Good. Now the Gemara is going to ask on that. Logically, why don't we go ahead and explain that we started off with? So good. You explained why yadish are present. You didn't explain why you went ahead and explained it before kinuyim. Why'd you opt to explain nazir before yadish before you explain what nedarim? What's the reason? And for the Gemara, right? Tana ahu me'salik ahu mefarish bereisha. But the Tana left off with, he explained first. In other words, we're now going to go through various places in Shas, albeit not as many as we stated in Masechta Nedarim, where you said two clauses and you explained the second clause first. So that's what we're doing in our Mishnah. You said two clauses, kinoi and yad, and you're explaining what? The last one first. Where do you see such a concept? Kitnan. Bameh madlikin in Masechta Shabbos. Bameh madlikin, what do you light with? Ubameh eid madlikin. Umefarish, we explain ein madlikin bereisha. We explain the latter first. Bamet tomnin, ubama ein tomnin. What can you insulate with, and what can't you insulate with? Umefarish ein tomnin bereisha. Again, you explain the last clause first. Bama isha yotzah. What can a woman go out with on Shabbos? What can she not go out with? So therefore, I just gave you a bunch of examples in Masechta Shabbos of the last clause being explained first. Who I did on Mishnah, the last clause, the clause of Yad Yadais being explained before the first clause of Kinuyim. Read the Gemara, but Tanan, just as easily as you explained that the last clause is explained first, I'll give you places where the first clause is explained first. But Tanan, what can an animal go out with, and what can't an animal go out with? Now, they only listed over here one. In Masechta Nedarim, we had many more. Right? When is a woman mutter to a husband? When does it need shemen? When does it need hagasha? What's the bechor lenachla? We gave a whole bunch of more examples where you said the din and you explained the first one first. So in other words, now your teretz doesn't wash, guys. If every place in the Shas, the second clause was explained first, I would understand why the second clause, Yadais, is explained first. But now that you're telling me it's not set in stone that the second clause is explained first, as I just showed you by Yesh Nochlin, so who I did in our Mishnah, you have to come up with the reason why you explain Yadais before you explain Kinuyim. Okay? So says the Gemara, we have to come up with a clause. There's a father to a son, a mother to what? A mother to a son. A mother can bequeath, but she can inherit. You go back and explain the first one. So in other words, you have to conclude tani hachi v'tani hachi. Good. You have to say what? Sometimes you say this, and sometimes you say that. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to attempt to explain why by Shabbos, guys, we listed the second clause first, and why by Behema we listed the first clause first. So we're fataiching now. We're coming to answer. Elahasam di sur de nafshehu. Over there regarding Shabbos, fellas, what was the cases? It's speaking about the issur on the person. What can you light with? What you can't light with? What can you go out with? What can't you go out with? In other words, it's speaking about the individual. It's speaking about the individual, and therefore, what we want to know the Hasam Yisur Nafshe, who Mefarish Yisur the Nafshe Bereisha. There you can explain the Issa Nafshe Bereisha because it's going on the person himself. Gabi Behema, the Surah Ida Behema, who whatever an animal goes out with, guys, it's not coming directly to you, an action that you're doing. It's coming your responsibility for an animal, right? Who does Mefarish Bereisha? You explained the Heta Bereisha. So you explained why by Shabbos you explained by the behema, you explained the first thing first because it's not directly to you, and why the issa you explained first because it was directly to you. Amid base. Now, Gabiyesh Leichman Nami Mifarish Ika Nachla Bereisha. So, and Gabiyesh Leichman, why we went to the first clause? We went to the first clause because that's the main parsha in the Torah. The main parsha of the Torah is a father bequeathing to a son, and a father is Leichman Umanchilin, so you explain that first. So now, Elahacha, however, over here, in other words, so I answered you why Behemoth learned it the way it was, why by Shabbos the Isurim learned the way it was, and why by Yesh Nochlin was learned the way it was. You didn't explain in Masechta Nedarim, in Masechta Nazir, why we're listing Yadais first. Elahacha lefushe kinui bereisha. Over here, logically you should explain it bereisha. What do you have to say? Hainu tam. That's the reason that you explain Yadais first. Since they come from Midrasha, they're very, very chashiv. In other words, if you might remember, hopefully you do, Masechta Nedarim on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, it's a little bit a while ago, a few months ago. We have a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ish kiyif yafli linda neder nazir lahazir Hashem." If a man expresses a neder and the double lashon of nazir lahazir, the Tanya nazir lahazir lasais kina naziris kinaziris v'yadais naziris kinaziris. So you have a limud to learn out yadais from the nazir from the darim. So therefore, the hekish to each other. So it's a limud. Once it's a limud, then it takes chavivas. Good. That's why give his brothers to choose first kinuyim or second yadais. He went with yadais since milsa de chavivile is something that's very dear to him. you'll go ahead and discuss first, right? Something that's very dear, you'll discuss first. That's the Gemara's teretz. So right now we're holding in a good place. We explained everything until right now. Freding Marakasha, the liftach behind Beresha, meaning it's so chaviv to you. Listen, guys, learn the following. Kol yadais naziris kinaziris v'niz kinuyim v'kinuyim. V'kinuyim naziris kinaziris. Since it's chaviv to you, why did you open up with kinuyim? Why didn't you open up with yadais? In other words, you're changing things around. Go. Kol yadais naziris kinaziris v'chol kinuyim naziris kinaziris. So start off first base with yadais. If it's explaining first, it's chaviv to you. List it first and explain it first. Why do you list kinuyim first and then explain yadais first? So there's no Tana ki maskel be'ikka carbon. When the Tana begins, he begins what? With the ikka carbon. Meaning, guys, a yad, you're holding on to it. It's a drasha that it works. A kinoi l'chayra is das. When you say the guys, you say hareni nazik, hareni nazir. It's the same thing. It's, in other words, a kinoi is not a limud. It is the direct acceptance of the neder. You're in other words, the classic ikka neder, guys. Hareni nazir, beli neder, right? That's the classic. Hareni nazik, haneni pazach. That's the same thing. So that's an ikar. So you want to know why you list kinuyim before yadais? Because kinuyim is an ikar. Where yadais are not, that's a limud, that's like a handle, you pull it, and therefore we learn that first. Why do you explain yadais first? Because it's mochaviv to you. This is mochaviv to you, it's explained first. Okay. Okay, so let's just recap. Let's recap. We begin the Mishnah, Kol kinuyim nedarim k'nedarim, right? And then we go, I said nedarim. Kol kinuyim naziris k'naziris, and then you go. It's not going to be the first time it happens, guys. But at least I didn't call you girls tonight. So now I'm doing well. Anyway, so the kinuyim of naziris like naziris, and then you say aha, which is a yad, hana, which is a yad. So the Gemara answers, read the following way: Kol kinuyim nedarim k'nedarim, yadis nedarim kol kinuyim naziris k'naziris, the yadis k'naziris k'naziris. And why are you explaining it first? Because the mochaviv. So list it first. It's not the ikka. The ikka is the kinoi, and therefore, okay. So in other words, we just went through the guts of the Mishnah. We didn't discuss anything about nazirim bechlal. Okay. Now, why? What's a yad? You know, yad. We said in the Masechta, the Ran says it here, the Ran said it there. The yad is just like when you take a handle of a pot, the whole pot gets schlepped along with it. A yad is like a lashon that you're using that schleps along the ikar thing with it. So if I say aha, I shall be. What is that? It's a yad for what? So I'll give you two possibilities. Aha nazir or aha betainis. I should be a nazir or I should be betainis. Now, why would you opt for that? Guys, listen to alumnus. When you say I shall be, right? It's mashma that there's a shinoi in the person. I shall be. I shall be. To say I shall be betainis is like an external type of thing. The tainus is external from me. Therefore, it's more mashma to say I am a nazir, because a nazir is a change to the person. I'm this person now, and I shall be something else. It's the implication is there's something else happening to the individual. That's if you hold you do not need yayim ochichos. That would work. In other words, if you ask yourself, how in the world can it be aha would work? And I just gave you an example. Aha, I shall be is mashma a change. What possible change is there? Bisman Azeh, let's not touch that question. But in those days, what's possibility? The possibility is what is Naziris. So therefore, if you do not need yayim ochichos, if you don't need such an influence from the outside, then you'd be a Nazir. The Gemara is going to say, Shmuel is going to say the following: when you said aha, there was a Nazir piercing in front of you. A Nazir piercing in front of me, and I say, I shall be. Now, clearly I shall be, but nothing else. That's a Yod Mechiach. So when Shmuel required the Nazir piercing in front of you, what was the statement being made? That he holds Yadayim Mochichas, need any Yadayim. You need a Yad that's Mochiach, that's reflective of what you meant. Let's see it inside. Says the Gemara, Ha'oima aha, how do you say nazir? Fred Gemara Dilma aha betainis kamar. Maybe as we spoke out, maybe aha means betainis. So Mashmuel Kigoin show you nazir over the fun of. There was another nazir going in front of him. And therefore, you can't say he meant betainis. Says the Gemara, Leimiksav Shmuel, Yadayim Shein Machichas Lo Yahave Yadayim. Right? Why? Because Bisman Shenaz over the fun of Lekal Sfuke B'Musachrina. Ava Ein Nazar over the fun of Amina and Dilma Habetainis Kamar. Okay? So therefore, no, that's the lashon of Nazir being Mishuna. And what are we saying? We're saying that what? That he wants to be another, obviously Yadayim Machichas, and the extra language over here that when he requires another to go in front of him. Okay, now you're touching up, guys, right? This guy is walking in front of me, and I say, I shall. Maybe it means I shall go ahead and pay for his kavanas. Since it's not so clear, you didn't say anything. Maybe when you said aha, right? Aha, I shall be. Maybe it means lapatra kavanas. He's a good friend of mine. I know he doesn't have so much money. Maybe when he said aha, the dilma lepoitre min kabbanaisav. Look at the small taisus, guys. The dilma lepoitre min kabbanaisav hamutol melav lehevi, that is placed upon that individual kishiyashlim nazirusai, when he completes his naziris. So all he wanted to do was get the other guy, financially aid the other person in bringing his kabbanis. How do you know he wants to become a nazir? And for the Gemara, the Kama Beliboy, right? He said in his mind, he expressed he wanted to be a nazir. Okay, so if he expressed the guys, look at Taisus, the Kama Beliboy, for the Gemara, Leos Nazir, that he said now. So you had two things, guys. You had the nazir going in front of him, yes, and he said what was on his mind. So the Gemara is going to say that's Pasha then, right? So look at the Taisus, the Kama Beliboy, Leos Nazir, we call Makim. The nazar over the fun of, you need a nazar going in front of him. The Kabbalah Shebelev ain't a klum, because he's makabel in his lave, it doesn't mean anything. The Gabi Nazar Ksiv Kiyafli. What does Kiyafli mean? Sheyafish Befiv, that explains it. So when he said aha, and the nazar was going in front of him, that was an explanation of what? That was an explanation of Naziris. How do you know that it's going on himself rather than to get his friend off the hook? Because he says, this is what I have in my heart. Aval continues Taisus. Aval ki nazar over lefanav upirish bisfasav aha ubeliboy chashav liyas nazir machshavas halev mahanya. Then the machshava of his heart helps. Kilo v'fiv, as if he said aha nazir kizer shayv lefanav. I should be like a nazir, like this guy going in front of me. So guys, let's go outside. Freding or akasha. Good. Yadayim achichas havi yadayim. I got a nazir piercing in front of me. I will go this way a little bit so I can see. Go this way. Okay. So I have saying aha, I have another in front of me. I shall be like him. I shall what? I shall want to get him off the hook. So no, he says, what I believe I meant that I want to be like him, like a nazir. So in that case, since there was another, usually you need pivli v'shavim. Usually, if you don't express something, we don't care about your lave. Since you said aha, you said that yad, that's enough of an expression to go ahead and take into account what I have in my lave, to go ahead and avert the problem of that I'm paying for his kabbanis. Let's conclude the Gemara. If you're telling me two things, that the nazir is piercing in front of him, and he's saying I want to be like him, and therefore not to bring his kabbanis. So what's the chiddush? I might think that what you need pivali v'shavim, that they have to be equal. Kamash malon in this case. That it's not necessary. Kamash malon in this case, what? It's not necessary. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it over here. I think we're going to call it a day over here. Bez Hashem, tomorrow there won't be share, and I'll be getting back to you on Thursday sometime from Yerushalayim Kodesh. Time to be announced. If I can't Zoom it live, it'll be get Steve on it. It'll definitely be recorded. If I can't sleep at night, then you'll know. Okay.
Safe trip, boys. Enjoy.
Have a great trip.